going forward, I will not record on my cell phone. I'm your host, Dane Thompson, checking with you live from the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. And this is, I know people who know me know I'm an NBA guy all at heart, but this is the team I cover on a regular basis. So this show I will do probably once a week will be dedicated to the Charlotte Hornets and everything that goes on in Buzz City. It's the team I cover for the 3pointconversion.com, as well as other places. So if you guys can hear me, please let me know if there's any echo or any voice in the background. You can follow me on Twitter at NBADT. I'm sorry, at Danny, DANNY number 3 Thompson on Twitter, as well as aroundtheassociation.com, which is everything for NBA. All right, so, and guess what? This preseason starting, and training camp will begin actually on Tuesday in Charlotte. The NBA preseason schedule was announced earlier today, and the Buzz will begin their season on the 12th of December against the Toronto Raptors in a home-and-home series that will basically kind of mitigate the travel situation in the NBA. So when you look at the way training camp was set up and also the way preseason is set up at the same time, how it's working for everybody is teams are going to stay in home-and-home situations. And when I say home-and-home situations, what it's going to do is that you're going to play 2 games in 3 nights in a home location and then travel. Now, some teams will play 4 games like the Buzz will. Some teams will play 2 games, for example, like the Brooklyn Nets. So the Hornets will play 2 games against the Toronto, a.k.a. the Tampa Raptors, against the Orlando Magic, which will be the final 2 preseason games, the 17th and the 19th of December. All right. So if you guys want to put stuff in the chat, please let me know. And that way I'll go ahead and let you guys know what's going on live. So like I said, follow me on Twitter. And like I said, if you want to subscribe to me on the Habs app, by all means, please do so. That way, guess what? Your comments will be shown on air. And guess what? As content creators, we also get paid as well, too. If you download the Habs app as well, too, not just myself, but there are plenty of other wonderful, verified journalists on here talking about everything from news, politics, and sports. Let's get down to what we're getting down to, and it's the Charlotte Hornets. As you see in the corner on your screen, you see LaMelo Ball, and he's been the big reason, the big story that everything is buzzing here in Charlotte. Why? Charlotte picked 3rd overall and got the guy that's the most well-known player of all the players in the draft. Nothing against James Wiseman, but he played 3 games in college. Nothing against Anthony Edwards. He didn't really have an NCAA tournament, and Georgia didn't have the best regular season. Charlotte drafted a kid that has been known more as being not just the baby brother and the youngest one of the Ball boys, and he's also LeVar's son. But what LaMelo Ball does differently than everybody else is he is going to bring an excitement to the city of Charlotte that we have not seen literally since, I'm going to say, Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson. The buzz in the city literally has been about what is LaMelo Ball going to do? What is James Borrego going to do with the offense? He said during the NBA press conference for the draft that it's more positionless basketball. When you look at the way the team is shaped, let's see, can you guys hear me? When the team is the way it's shaped, and we'll put myself back in the screen. All right. So the way the team is playing different positions. When he told us back in the camp this summer that PJ Washington plays some of the 5, and he's playing some of the center position, as well as you'll see Miles Bridges play different positions. But with LaMelo Ball, you can probably see a little bit of what the Oklahoma City Thunder did last year, which caused a lot of great success. That was having 3 guards on the court. When you have LaMelo Ball, you have Terry Rozier, who's over 40% 3-point shooter, and then you also have guys like Devontae Graham, who, quote-unquote, should have been the most improved player of the year. You have weapons on the outside. Miles Bridges is a slasher to the rim, and PJ was very, very solid last year. So at times you can see Charlotte go small, and then when they go small, you see the ability for LaMelo Ball to make plays. Now, other parts of the draft they went through, they drafted Vernon Carey from Duke, the interior presence, double-double machine at Duke. When you last saw him, he was 275 pounds. Well, Carey's lost over 30 pounds. Super shape. And remember, he said he played out of shape. And when you average a double-double at Duke, I think he had 18 double-doubles as a Duke freshman, which I think set the Duke record more than I think was second only to Marvin Bagley, I think, in school history. You have a recipe for something special. Nick Richards, a guy that you saw from Kansas, because Kentucky, big-time shot blocker, will come in, and he'll also block shots as well as he does a lot of the things that you will see and remind you like Tyson Chandler, Clint Capella, a guy that will set screens, he'll block shots, he'll do the little things that you need. And the other pick was Grant Riller from the universe from Charleston's, or we'll see a lot of CJ McCallum in him. So what does that mean for the Hornets going into the future this year? Well, in Charlotte's case, how this is all going to work is Charlotte doesn't have a quote unquote star. Well, Michael Jordan solved that problem and solved it very quickly. When you look at Gordon Hayward, you look at the contract that Gordon Hayward signed. It's 4 years at $120 million. Nicholas Batum on there, who's coming off a 5-year, $120 million contract. All right. They both have similar type of games. And then when you see guys like that sign those contracts, you're wondering, what is Michael Jordan doing? You hear people everywhere saying Jordan's not the smartest guy in the world. Jordan's doing what Jordan does best, which is make mistakes. But when you're a team that has not been in the playoffs, a team that doesn't have so much success, when you come to get free agents, you're going to have to overpay them. It's not more than just you have to do it. Look what the Orlando Magic did with Rashard Lewis about maybe almost 10 years ago when they got to the finals. They had to pay Rashard Lewis $126 million over 7 years, which is a completely different contract at the time. They overpaid Rashard Lewis because it sat next to Dwight Howard, and it gave Orlando another star player. That's how it works in the NBA. If Charlotte were to go into free agency right next summer with all the cap space in the world, do you really think Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, Anthony Davis, LeBron, those guys are going to go out and try to look at Charlotte as the first option? It doesn't work that way. You're going to have to go out and have to spend money. This is the biggest signing that Michael Jordan has had on top of everything else. That's what you have to do. It makes things different, and it also allows this team to do more and more and more. It's going to look bad in the beginning, all right? And it's trying to figure all this out. But what it's going to do for the Hornets is it's going to put more eyes on it. Gordon Hayward, the last time he was a number one option, was an all-star in Utah. This is before the injury. He got the big contract in Boston, got hurt the first game. It took him 2 years to really get himself back in shape, in order in the league. But on top of that, Gordon Hayward wasn't the number one option in Boston. They had Jason Tatum. You had Jaylen Brown. They had Kyrie Irving for 1 year, and you had Kemba Walker last year. Marcus Smart. They had other scoring options that really took away from Gordon being creative. In Charlotte, Devontae Graham did average 18 points a game, but he shot less than 40% from the floor. Hayward is a guy, when he's healthy, can shoot in the high 40s, close to 50, can shoot almost 38, 39%, and gets to the line and shoots the free throw very well. If Gordon Hayward and James will become a number one option, let's be honest, this is the type of year that you're looking at the 21-5-5 that he had in Utah before he got the big contract. And Jay Boomer Sumer in the chat says, well, Michael Jordan overpaid him. Listen, what's overpayment? The Boston Celtics offered him basically the same contract to stay. The Indiana Pacers were willing to pay him a whole bunch of money at the same time. So Gordon Hayward's not just some guy that was not going to get paid. It looks like overpaid because of the fact of Gordon Hayward only averaged 15, almost 5 and 5 a game last year. It's the same numbers that Nick Batum was averaging when he got his big contract all of 5 years ago. Hornets fans are worried. He's on the other side of 30 years old. He'll be 34 years old towards the end of his contract, going on 35. It is scary. But at what point in time do you sit there and sell the money? Okay. What the Hornets do have on their side is the fact that if LaMelo Ball comes in here and plays to his talent level, the Hornets will have probably the rookie of the year sitting right there. You also can be a star player, but doesn't have to be a number one. The Hornets have Devontae Graham, you have Terry Rozier, and if you want to trade it, because guess what? If you trade it, it's not easy. We've learned that contracts this summer can be traded. Ask Al Horford. You can actually trade contracts. If you ask guys like Danny Green, contracts can be moved at the right cost. It wouldn't shock me if got teams like Detroit traded Blake Griffin in the offseason. What I'm saying is, when you look at the Charlotte Hornets and their roster right now, let's look at the depth chart as we go into preseason. The Hornets have a multitude of guards, and that's their strength. You already, besides Rozier and besides Devontae Graham, you look at guys like Cody Martin, who actually had a very, very solid year where he had the playing time. Also, you have Malik Monk, who's trying to figure out his way in the NBA. And to me, Grant Riller could be the guy that could take all their minutes, like especially guys like Malik Monk's minutes, because Riller is that type of player. Big shout outs to my man Mike Patton in the chat about Gordon Hayward. He says, He's concerned that Gordon can't stay healthy. Listen, you got to take risk. At some point, Michael Jordan has to take a risk, and I think this is a good one. When you look at risk in the NBA, it happens. It's good or bad. If you're a Hornets fan, is it wrong to make a risk on something that is going to be beneficial and useful? In this economy, it is a steal. Gordon Hayward has something to prove, and he's looking like he wants to prove himself. That's all it is. It is. It is what it is. To Jay Booner said Michael Jordan overpaid him. Like I said, I don't think it's overpay. My main man Rodney Richardson says it's an overpay because Charlotte did it. It's not an overpay because guess what? If Orlando would have did it, it was overpay. If Oklahoma City did it, it was overpay. That's just how it is. 916 over on the chat says the Hornets are a basketball team. I guess obviously you haven't paid attention or you just don't pay 2K or obviously you're watching the wrong sport. But yes, the Hornets are a basketball team. And guess what? They're a team that actually, at the way they're currently constructed, will get themselves potentially in that playing game situation that the Eastern Conference has going on this year. And once again, it's a one-game playoff. The goal for the Hornets this year is not to get to the 8 seed. The goal is to get to the 10 seed. If you get to the 10 spot, it's a one-game plan between 10 and 9. And if you win that game, you got one game to make the playoffs. That's all it is. Right now, the NBA this season is about March Madness. The Hornets, yes, with Nick Batum, if they cannot trade Nick Batum, the contract is going to stay on the books. It is what it is. It's going to be $9 million in the books for the next 3 years. But if they hit a home run with Ball and Gordon Hayward turns out what he is, they're going to find a center somewhere. Whether it be Carey, whether it be Nick Richards, whether it be next summer when they can go after Andre Drummond next summer, since he'll be an unrestricted free agent. If the Hornets make the playoffs or even come close to the playoffs, Charlotte will position themselves in the same position the Atlanta Hawks are positioning themselves in this year. The Hawks right now, they had Trae Young, you have John Collins, they had the draft picks with Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter. So what did they do? They traded for Clint Capella. They went out and signed Gallinari. They went out and signed Bojan Bogdanovic. And what does that do? On top of all they've done, they put themselves right in the playoff picture, and they're going to be in the playoffs going forward, barring any type of injuries. I'm not Hornets have trade the ball is going to be traded, but because he's a passer, a willing passer, and he's flashy and excited, and guess what? People are going to start watching. I'm sorry, if the screen's coming, shake you guys, let me know. If you look at what LaMelo is not going to be shooting at the end of the shot clocks as Hornets fans have seen for the last 5 years. Okay, in the last few years, Devontae Graham took so many shots at the end of the shot clock, it doesn't look pretty. But you have Ball that can make games easier for those two guys. Film, LaMelo Ball also made slashers and cutters a lot better. And what is Miles Bridges? He's a slasher and he's a cutter. It makes it perfect. It makes it a perfect fit. Watch those guys get to the back door and LaMelo Ball finds them easily. He's going to make baskets easier for PJ Washington. He's going to make baskets easier for Cody Zeller. When Wendell Carter Jr., I asked him on draft night, how would it feel to play next to a LaMelo Ball? He compared it a lot to Trey Jones. When you have a ball handler that can get you the ball in the right spaces, it's going to be easier. If the things are let off of him and let him play his game, let him make mistakes, the Hornets have a star player on their system. Now, Antoine Smith in the chat says, Devontae Graham's a future all-star. Let's kind of slow this down. But he's going to be very good in this system. What I see Devontae Graham is going to be in the NBA is he's 6'1", and Devontae Graham's an outstanding scorer, an outstanding shooter. He does really, really good things with the basketball in his hands. And there's no offense to Devontae Graham, but I see a lot of Isaiah Thomas in Phoenix and Sacramento and Devontae Graham. Jamal Crawford even. A guy that can come off the bench and knock down as many shots as possible. He'll play 35 minutes tonight. Lou Williams does the same thing. He's a guy that can come in and just get a ton of baskets. There's nothing wrong with that. Guys have made careers out of that, and Lou Williams and Jamal Crawford might end up being in the Hall of Fame just for something like that. Devontae's a starter in this system right now. Will he be a starter later on? Well, but I will tell you this. When you look at what's going on here. That's what the Hornets are, I think the Hornets are going to do as we get into training camp. Seriously doubtful. It's not ignoring what the Hawks did, but this is not about the Atlanta Hawks. I was making a comparison to the Hawks and the Hornets and how the parallels happen. This is all Hornets. So this is a Hornets show. Like I said, I can talk Hawks, and I will do an NBA haps later on for the other teams around the league, but this is really about the Hornets and what to look for in training camp. Training camp starts on Tuesday, and the roster is pretty much set for the most part. The real position battles you have to look out for as training camp begins is LaMelo Ball going to start on day one? From what James Borrego and what Mitch Kupchak, especially Kupchak, has said from the very beginning, it is all about him playing the game the right way and earning his minutes. He's not going to walk in the door as a starter in day one. I don't know if he starts on opening night. We have to see how those first 4 preseason games go and also how he does in training camp. But what Ball does have an advantage for is the fact of LaMelo played professional basketball, not just in Australia, but he's been playing professional as a 16-year-old, even in the lower levels of I think it was Lithuania, where he was playing overseas. Guess what? He's still playing as 25 and 26-year-old grown men and has been doing it at a regular level for the last 3 years. Look at the numbers in Australia and don't look at the shooting percentages. If you're going to look at anything for LaMelo Ball, watch all the film, watch the final 4 games that he had in Australia before he had the foot injury and ended his season. What it did was you saw the fact of he had a triple-double, 2 other games where he almost had a triple-double, and another game where he knocked down a few more three-pointers. You saw the athleticism. Yes, he does have shot selection issues, but that will change in the NBA. But what you saw was a passion for the game, the ability to do and make players better around him. He played with guys that played in the NBA. This is going to be a real great adjustment. The question was, seriously, have a chance to be ninth. They do. If you look at the way the Eastern Conference ended last year, all right, 7 and 8 were the Brooklyn Nets and the Orlando Magic. The Nets are going to be better irregardless of what happens. Kevin Durant coming on the court, as long as he does not get hurt and he plays at least half the season, the Nets are already a top 6 team easily. Now look who's sliding down. We all know Milwaukee will be right around the same as what last year. Miami was right around the same. I think Miami will be just as good as they were last year. Philadelphia has rebalanced their roster, has another head coach. I think they'll be even better. The team I'm worried about sliding down as Atlanta moves up, maybe in that 6-7 spot, is the Indiana Pacers. We don't know what Victor Oladipo brings to the table. So if Oladipo doesn't like the player he was 2 years ago, you're looking at a team that could potentially slide down to 7 and 8. All right. Orlando's offseason hasn't been much because they had no cap space to do much of anything whatsoever. So Orlando could be that team sliding out. Washington gets John Wall back. And when Washington gets John Wall back, we don't know what he's coming back from. And let me tell you why. It's one thing to come back from an ACL injury. It's one thing to come back from the Achilles injury, which most players don't come back from. No player has ever come back from both of them at the same time. And that's John Wall. He looks explosive in situations like in pickup games, but that's a pickup game. It has nothing to do with it. Rodney Richardson's point, what about the Toronto Raptors? Lost their big men. They got Aaron Baines to replace Marc Gasol. Chris Boucher is going to get more playing time. And if you watch enough Chris Boucher when he's gotten playing time, he's really good and really talented. And he blocks shots at a high level. A guy with a high motor. I don't think the Raptors are much trouble. I think the Pacers are the one that slides down. We all talked about Charlotte. We talked about how good Atlanta got in the offseason. The Chicago Bulls are automatically better because they have a competent head coach. Jim Boylan's gone, and now you bring in Billy Donovan, a guy who knows how to coach young kids and has been in the playoffs every year he's been a head coach. That's competency. Charlotte is already better than New York, who really didn't do anything in the offseason. Charlotte's already better than Cleveland, who has too much at the top, not enough in the backcourt, and no one knows what they're doing at the forward position. They got too many bigs, interesting guards, and nothing at the small forward position. Even though I think Isaac Okoro would be okay. You look at off the top of the head, you're looking at the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons basically took everything off their roster, and we don't know what Troy Weaver's doing yet. All we know is a complete rebuilding job. So Charlotte's already ahead of all those teams already, and now you're looking at 11. We, like I said, Atlanta, Chicago, Charlotte. Those teams are all in that final spot. Charlotte can, and I think they have a shot not only of getting to 10, but getting to 9 as well too. Jamal Darby. Keep in mind the Hornets were a 9 seed last year. That is completely well. Technically, that's not as correct in the standings, but Charlotte was 10 going into the bubble. Washington fell short because Bradley Beal got hurt. If Bradley Beal played, Orlando would have been playing in the play-in game. It's just that simple. Standings are one thing. Washington sent a B squad and Davis Bertans over in or out to Orlando in the bubble. Now you can do what my man Antoine Smith did earlier and subscribe to me on the Haps app. Don't worry, this will get better as we go along throughout the entire season because Let's Go Hornets will be going on a regular basis. And at the same time, you can do what Precious did as well too. She sponsored the show by giving up a monthly sponsorship. If you go on the Haps app, you also can see. You can subscribe not only to myself, but also to many of journalists. If you think, if you want to sponsor us, please, by all means, this is what we do for a living. Me, I do cover the Charlotte Hornets on a day-to-day basis. And the good news is this show will always be about the Hornets. Like I said, the Let's Go Hornets will be about the Hornets. I cover this team on a daily basis, and this will also be on podcast later on too. Check out as well as on YouTube, Facebook, and everywhere basketball is. Now, Brightleg says, the Hornets are a 5 or a 6 seed team. Okay. I'm not that. I like the way this roster is made up, but I'm going to be very, very honest about it. This team's not a 5. Okay. This team's not nowhere near a 5. Because if you look at the top 5 seeds in the Eastern Conference last year, you're looking at Miami, you're looking at Boston, look at Toronto, Philadelphia, and in Miami. Those teams are all better than Charlotte. That's not even close. And I'm not even being unrealistic at this point. All right, they're not better than any of those 6 teams. Not even. I don't think Charlotte would only get to 7 if one of the top 6 teams gets injured, and I would see it would have to be a significant injury. Brooklyn, even without Kevin Durant, I think is still better than Charlotte, top to bottom. For 15 for 15. That's it's not to that point yet. But this is a turning year for the franchise, a turning year for everything in Charlotte. And most importantly, I think this is a year going into preseason that the Charlotte Hornets actually have the most optimism they've had in a very, very long time. This team has a lot more potential to be way better than what they were last year. And also, when you look at this team from the roster, for those who don't watch the Charlotte Hornets, you're wondering what is on this roster. Why are we a team? Why is the Hornets a team that can make the playoffs? Well, I'll give you a quick 90-second synopsis of this roster, the way it's constructed. You take away LaMelo Ball, and you look what's left on the roster from last season. Terry Rozier, people talked about the contract. He took over for Kemba Walker. He shot 40% from the three-point line, averaged 7, was the team's leading scorer last year. He took over for the franchise's greatest player of all time and did very well with it. You can tank him. You can say he's not a pure point guard, but he also scores on a regular basis. So you have to give him that. You look at Devontae Graham, the NBA's biggest leap when it comes to points per game all season. All right, that's what happened. He went from averaging 5 points a game to almost 18 a game, over 18 points a game last season. He shot the ball a lot, and he shot the ball very effectively. The only bad part was he took so many bad shots because the shot clock was running down on him. Miles Bridges is a player that has not hit his peak. We have not figured out what Miles Bridges is. Miles Bridges at the same point of his career Aaron Gordon was in Orlando. We just don't know what he is yet. We've got to figure that part out. Mike Patton says in the chat, PJ Washington. Washington had an underrated season. First game scored 27 points as his first game as a Hornet and was consistent all year. Really did hit a rookie wall. He still has room to improve. But what we saw from PJ is what we're going to see for PJ most of the season. And he was pretty much the same player all year. And this is what you're going to see going forward. He's very consistent. He's not going to give you 10, 15 rebounds a game, but he will knock down some three-point shots. He knocked down way more than he did at Kentucky and showed versatility playing the 4, and he'll now play some of the 5, and he's actually a pretty good ball handler. Cody Zeller doesn't do too much, and Hornets fans get a little frustrated with Cody, but Cody will set screens. Cody plays hustle. He doesn't really protect the rim very well, but he plays with effort every night, and that's what you need. You got both Martin twins, Cody and Caleb Martin. Both guys are big hustlers. Cody Martin is a very much more of the defensive mind of the two. Caleb's a scorer. Cody Martin will see a lot of time on the floor because he loves to defend everywhere. He will defend the point guard. He'll defend 1 through 3 and do it very well. Caleb is a very, very good shooter, was out in Greensboro knocking down a ton of shots, and I think he might have a chance to make the roster. We talk about Malik Monk is the X factor. Before he got hit with a drug suspension, Monk was actually turning the corner. He was turning the corner as a shooter. He was turning the corner as a defender, and he was starting to become that guy. Then he gets suspended. This is his final year of his contract and potentially could be his last time around Charlotte because, as we've seen, the Hornets have done well with second-round picks over the last couple of years. We talked about the Martin twins. Cody Martin was drafted. Caleb was a free agent. We saw Devontae Graham. Jaden McDaniels might even hit this rotation, a second-round pick from Washington last year. They got 3 second-round picks this year. This might be the end for Malik Monk at this point. We talked about Grant Riller earlier. I think he's a huge scorer from the College of Charleston. Ask University of North Carolina how good of a scorer he is because he scored a ton of points in them in the game last year. He's a 6'3" guard, reminds you a lot of CJ McCollum. I asked him about that in his first interview in Charlotte. He said he watched a lot of tape of CJ McCollum and his game plays like him. He's a big time shooter and a big time scorer. And to my man Rashad Phillips, he was one of the first people to put me on to Grant Riller about 2 years ago. Big shout out to my man RP3 Natural. Check him out on Twitter as well too. Outstanding draft prospect guy and also one of the best followers on Twitter as well too. When you look at guys like we talk about Bismack Biyombo. Biyombo resigned. His big contract's gone. Biyombo is a leader in the locker room. I think he'll teach a lot of the younger players how to be professionals. Now, I didn't mention Gordon Hayward because we mentioned him earlier. I think Hayward, now that he actually has a green light to be much more of himself, I think he's not the Boston Gordon Hayward. I think he reverts to the all-star Utah Gordon Hayward. Will he make the all-star team? I don't know if he will. But what I will say is I think Gordon Hayward will lead this team in scoring this year. I think Gordon Hayward will go back to the player he was 5 years ago in Utah when he put himself on the map. I think that it's a different Gordon Hayward. He's focused, and guess what? People forgot how good he really is. Charlotte fans will love him because he does the things. He can score better than Nick Batum. He's much more offensive than Nick Batum is, but he also provides the rebounding and assist level, passing skills that you'd had from Batum before. I'm not scared to say how good Nick Batum was at one point for this team. Hornets fans were upset for the last couple years that he rode the bench, but he was not part of what this team had. Yes, the contract was huge, but remember, he wasn't signed. This wasn't the end of the contract. His best production with Kemba Walker was on the team, and guess what? It's kind of a different story now. Bismack, I mentioned how Biyombo is going to be the leader of the team on the bench, and Charlotte has a lot of very, very good pieces. They have good pieces. They're not elite pieces. They're, I think, 1 year away, barring anything crazy. The Hornets are 1 year away from actually making some noise in the NBA. Big shout out to Niggas Brown, said not a single bad point made. Hey, I appreciate that. Johnny Slick in the YouTube chat says, in what season do you think the Hornets should relocate and become the Seattle Supersonics? I don't even know why I'm even addressing this question. The Hornets aren't going anywhere. Okay, Michael Jordan's from here. This team is committed to staying here. That's a question. I'm just only answering because it's in the chat. All right, guys. This actually was supposed to be 15 minutes. It turned into 30. So, with Talking Hornets, let's Talking Hornets. This will be actually. I'll come back on the air on Tuesday night, the first day after training camp. I'll get you guys a lot of the stuff that I learned from the presser from day one. Follow me on Twitter at Danny3Thompson. That's DANNY number 3 Thompson on Twitter. Download the Haps app once again. Like I said, subscribe, share. Also donate to not just myself, but there are plenty of journalists. My man Mike Patton is also in the chat. He was on earlier with man Brian Waters, Ashley Baker. There's some of the sports journalists that are on this app as well too. Check them out and also check out as many of these wonderful journalists. And they're not just freelancers. These are actual real journalists that cover a multitude of things. And you also get a chance to see different perspectives. So this show is all about the Hornets. So I'm sorry if it's not about your favorite team, but I promise you I will do another NBA-related Haps once a week based upon the fact that people want to talk NBA hoops. So, like I said, I'll be back on Tuesday night right around 9:30 p.m. talking day one of training camp. And like I said, for those who missed the preseason schedule for the Hornets, here's how it works. They will play on December 12th and December 14th against the Toronto Raptors, both at 7 p.m. The games are in Charlotte. If you're in the Charlotte local market, it is going to be on Fox Sports South. So both home games will be televised. They will then close preseason on December 17th and December 19th against the Orlando Magic down in Orlando. I'm not sure who has, I think I know Fox Sports Florida will have the game for the Magic side of things. If you have NBA League Pass, it should be on that side. I don't think the Hornets are sending. I don't think the Hornets will have those 2 games broadcast. We'll tip off the season on December 22nd. We do not have the NBA schedules yet. Once we get them, I will probably do a live to go over and break down the Hornets schedule. My man Edward Johnson said the Hayward pickup was bad. Here's the thing. It wasn't as bad as other pickups. This pickup was not as bad as Jeremy Grant getting $60 million from the Detroit Pistons. It was not as bad as, I would say, Joe Harris getting $78 million from the Brooklyn Nets to be a 4th option, maybe even a 5th option, and sometimes not even on the court during crunch time. So those contracts are pretty bad. Hayward is a guy that's been an all-star. He is going to, and he's going to be all-star. And his second point is why they keep Terry Rozier. It's the same reason in the NFL or other sports why you have guys that play multiple positions. Because LaMelo Ball is 6'6", 6'7", maybe 6'8", depending on who you ask. Melo can play both positions. Terry Rozier can shoot the basketball and play next to LaMelo Ball. He can also play next to Devontae Graham, and he's a better defender than both Graham and Ball at this point in his career. So why would you trade a guy that's a 40% three-point shooter and your team's best on-ball defender on defense? You don't do things like that. Not if you're trying to win and trying to get better on a daily basis. What we will see, last before we go, one thing you will see from this Hornets team, they're going to run. It's going to be an exciting style of basketball, which plays into the man that you're going to see in this corner right here, is going to play in this man's favor. And I'm telling you right now, for those who have not seen LaMelo Ball play, go watch the final 3 games from the NBL season and watch how LaMelo Ball reacted on both offense and defense. His defense might not be the best in the pick and roll, but the kid's only is 18, 19 years old. He's got plenty of time. But you see how his teammates reacted. You saw how he got the fans involved. You saw the passing. You saw the shooting. LaMelo Ball, if he is unleashed, will win the Rookie of the Year. So I will check you guys out on Tuesday for Talking Hornets. I'm your host, Danny. I'm Danny Thompson from the 3pointconversion.com. Check me out on Twitter once again at Danny, D-A-N-Y, number 3 Thompson on Twitter. Also, if you're looking to talk regular all sports, check out my show Monday nights on Zingo Television, Blackjack TV, channel 198, as well as Facebook Live called Beyond the Buzzer. Myself and Kyle Nash, we talk all things in the fact of sports. So I'll check you guys out. Like, share, tag. Also, subscribe to me on Haps to get everything when I do it, how I do it. Big shout out to everybody that came through. I appreciate the love. I think it was almost 300, 400 viewers tonight on all different platforms. We're going to do this more often. I promise. Big shout out to my man Peter and Pablo from Haps for having me on here. And like I said, I don't ignore comments. It's just that everything had well. And yes, Freddie, we will have fun with Gordon Hayward because trust me, I think Hornets fans will really enjoy Gordon Hayward. Hornets fans want to win. And when Hornets fans want to win, that's what it is. Gil, yes, LaMelo Ball is a box office star. I think he's the biggest star Charlotte has had in its possession. No offense to Kemba Walker, since Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning. This is the type of player that's going to be a star. Nothing against Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice was an all-star. I think LaMelo Ball would give the Hornets as 72 games. I think we'll see LaMelo Ball in the Hornets at least 3 or 4 times this season. Blitz takes there's no Hornets right now, so we're gonna figure this out. But like I said, big shout outs to everybody, and we're gonna do this more often. Like I said, I'll be back on Tuesday night after day 1 of training camp. I'm Danny Thompson for Talking Hornets. We'll catch you guys out on Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy holidays.